Hey, Thomas, how are you today? Welcome back.
Thank you, Dharam. I'm very fine. So sitting here in Germany in my attic as always, and it's freezing outside, so it's getting winter in Germany, but it's not yet snowing in my area. In some other areas, yes, but it's okay. So yeah, I'm working on a paper right now, and it's about, what's the difference between project and program management. So somehow it's sometimes also what we discuss.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. And yeah, once again, good to see you. It's going great with so many podcasts you've done. I'm very happy to see you again.
Yeah, yeah. Where are we? Around 75 or so. So let's see if we can reach 100
Yeah,
next year.
exactly. All right. So today's topic is interesting. And I think many people do think, do we really need project managers? Hmm.
Hmm.
And why do we need, what value they are adding? So let's talk about it. It's one of the
Oh,
common myth around the business people think that I don't think we need project managers. We can do it by ourselves.
yeah, yeah, that's true. And actually, I had some discussions with especially leaders of small, medium businesses, and so they have a hard time to find benefits for project management because they think it's also a little bit bureaucracy and our people work as they do very well, have good people. And so maybe we come back, the same arguments also for some bigger organizations, true, but especially small medium business are not very known to establish project management structures in their organizations.
Yeah. And
I had another example, project management is one discipline, what we think is very important, for organizations. But another discipline is also quality management,
mm,
which might be represented by ISO 9000. So, I ran into a leader of a small company. Actually, it was a butcher with 3 employees, and he implemented ISO 9000, the
okay.
quality management system. And he said, that's very worthwhile because now we have a good documentation, we know the processes, we know what to do, and also it's a label for our marketing. We are ISO 9000 certified, and so he invested the money, he changed the processes in his organization, and put a butcher, selling meat, selling sausages, this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Yeah, sometimes, these leaders have no idea about project management. Maybe that's what they don't know. They have not never done any project management. They
Yeah,
have
yeah.
grown up as a business leaders. That may be the reason. Okay, let's talk about that. Let me ask you my first question. So, what are some of the misconceptions organizations have about necessity of project management, program management, and how can we effectively address these misconceptions?
Yeah. So three things, misconceptions of organizations. Then, what are they and how can we counter them? So what are organizations anyhow?
Mm,
If you have organizations, you have a lot of different roles and responsibilities in the organization, hierarchy maybe. So, and these are all stakeholders of let's say, the effort to implement project management, and they all have an opinion or need or request. So, if you look at the CEO, which is more a strategic role, so he would relate the benefits of project management to his role. How does it help me with my implementation of strategy? How find strategy and so on. In contrast, if you look at the um, operations, the ongoing business and what they're doing every day, the CEO would have a different aspect. He would say, okay, how can projects help me in increasing efficiency and reducing costs and maybe becoming quicker in what we do?
yeah.
or or the CIO. IT is an enabler for many of these businesses these days. So he would also say, okay, how can projects help me to better solve the problems of my customers in the organization and so on. And if you look at employees, if you are somebody who's trying to sell it, maybe you talk with your direct manager, and convince him for project management. And maybe you don't get really to the point that he represents the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you do, you have always be in the situation to understand who are you talking to, whom do you want to convince, and what are their expectations. What are their roles and responsibilities, and how can project management adapt to that? And then you don't have one story, maybe you have 10 stories.
Yeah.
But you build from the whole project management benefits case. And actually, that's also what PMI did some years ago. They paid for I think 2 or 3 million research study in organizations. What is the value of project management for your organization?
Yeah.
And they came up. There is not one value for everybody, but
Okay.
there are. The value is dependent on your context, your industry, your geography, your situation as an organization, and then they said, okay, looking at this context, many organizations really see a value, but they are specific value. You cannot say the value is cost down. No, it's not. Maybe for some, but not for everybody. Maybe for some, it's enabling growth and so on. So, but if you now talk to the stakeholders, and we're talking about, um, misconceptions of organizations, of these stakeholders, and I think the first misconception is that they don't understand what project management is. So, I'm a long-term project manager, and I worked for PMI, but for years and years and years, my wife didn't want to hear it, And in my circle of friends, if they are not related to some project management, they don't know what to do. If I talk to new people, I said I'm a project manager. So what do you do? And then I try to explain, but it depends, where they are living, what their business is, and how they relate to changes, and how to implement changes, and so on. So if the stakeholder you're talking to doesn't have a exposure to project management, does already have some ideas what it is, maybe heard from other organizations how they deal with it. This is one of the first misconceptions, and it's easily to tackle, because you really have to explain to them what project management is, what it can do. Maybe have some examples, some cases, how it can be utilized for the benefit or for his or her area of responsibility.
So, Thomas, one thing I like to add here, you said that they have no idea. Many senior executives, they don't know what is project management all about, what they do and how they do. I was talking to one of the company back in Australia, a telecom company, and they said we got so many EAs, executive assistant, or whatever their support to the executives. Because of restructuring, we're not letting them go, but we are making them project managers. So, sorry, what do you mean? Oh, when project managers, what they do, they just run around, get the things done, organizing something, and they have list of activities. These girls are doing that anyway. And I said, hang on, project management not just organizing this event or this and taking calls, calling people. It's more than that. It's a lot of things. How do you manage a scope? How do you define your requirement? You have risk management happening and making sure you're ready for the risk about to happen. You have a budget, enough budget, many things to do.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I also, on the other hand, when I mentor young people who are looking for a project management career, they have an understanding what it is, but then they are coming to the point where they have to record their experience, because if they want to go for PMP, we need 3 years of experience. And then, said, I have never done a project. And I said, oh, wait a minute, what have you done? And maybe this classifies as a project, if you think about it. If you translate it into a language of project management, what you did. So for instance, if a young lady I talked to, she has done events for her company, marketing events. Every event could be seen as a project. Yeah, and you manage this if you were in charge. Then yeah, maybe you had a budget. Definitely, you had a schedule. You had resources. And lots of stakeholders to manage, and you had to maybe communicate a lot. So these are all tasks of a project manager, just from the view, from the angle of the project manager, and that's what you did. And though I help a lot of people, who didn't have an exposure on project management, now want to go to this career because they, I don't know, for some reason, but then they have to review their life experience, and they might find out they have a lot of projects.
Yeah. And coming back to this point, we're saying how can we effectively address this misconception that they think the project manager is not adding value, they're not required, they are waste of time, waste of money. What is your suggestion to them?
Okay, it's a topic of bureaucracy, for instance, or the topic of it's costly to
Yeah.
implement something. Yes, every change needs an investment,
Yeah.
at least an investment in in the mindset that you say, okay, we want to do something. And the question is, why wouldn't you do that investment? Maybe you have another lot of stress, and the famous picture of I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, I have to um, go to a tree to fell a tree, so I first sharpen my saw, and that's the same deal. Sharpening your saw if you implement project manager, because you're doing a lot of things now, and maybe you want to do it faster, better, and then maybe project management might help, and you can pilot it then. So that would be my answer to them. Um,
Yeah.
they
I
might, and it's correct in the beginning. It might look like bureaucracy, additional things you have never need before. Why share a WBS? Huh? Why create one and share it? And so some things, if you do it once, then it's okay. But if you have a lot of these bureaucracy things, then you are overwhelmed and you say, oh, no, no, I won't start with that. So even with that, you have to go step by step and in easy steps, and show the benefits of easy steps. So I would recommend, if you are arguing with these guys, try not to become a religious sect leader, evangelists of project management. I've seen a lot of people trying to do that, and they always fail, because then you look suspicious, if you have uh, let's say a calling from somebody, from PMI CEO, and then a calling to implement project management. And if you're trying to do that, you are not really looking in what these organizations, these people really need to know, to understand, and need to know
Yeah.
forward.
See, it's not about talking, saying that project manager is great and this and that. As a project manager, you have to show the value to them. See, if you come to me, hey, hire me, I'm a good, best person. I can do this. So show me how can you do that. If you can show me, let's say as a project manager, you can get the project done and on time with the managing all the risk issues effectively and get us the value. Then only I can, you don't have to talk. Then these activities, oh yeah, project management is great. Without
Yeah.
project management, we have failed many times. But this project manager, which one of you, running the project, show them the value. Prove that they cannot survive without a good project manager. And again, I'm saying good project manager, not any. Hey, I'm at PMP. You should hire me. No, I mean you not only learning for the books, but you need to show them this is how things should be done and do them. Then only
Yeah.
people believe that.
And it's difficult for people who are just achieved, let's say, the PMP, and they go into an organization and try to show the value of project management, because they don't have the experience how to create the value and how to use the tools and techniques, and how to do that. So there is a great risk of failure. So you have to go in maybe with a mentor, and maybe with somebody who has some experience to understand where you could show the value, because there's no value, if you start project management with earned value. Well, maybe that's not the right thing to do. You have to have some experience and some feeling what is there. And then, another misconception or another hurdle is the cultural resistance in different ways. The way not invented here syndrome. So we've always done it like we do it now. Why should we do something else? This is something. Or I actually I worked a lot in Japan, and the Japanese also have a natural resistance against project management as an improvement tool, because they already know how to do things, and they are very good at it. They invented the quality movement, and they were very good in production and manufacturing, and they copied things. But project management is not among these techniques that was invented in Japan, and that's another culture resistance. Why they said, okay, it's coming from the US or somewhere.
Yeah.
Why should why should it be good for us? It's not fitting to our things. And give you a story. I worked for a Japanese manager in Hamburg, and we discussed, and I wanted to create a concept, and I needed, in the Western way, I needed, okay, these are the elements of the structure, and now I need responsible persons for each of the elements. And and I asked him, who is responsible for this, and he replied to me, we are all responsible to make it happen. So, this is the communal thinking of the Japanese. We are a group, and every employee is able to stop the production line. So every employee is in charge of the end product. And that's a philosophical thinking, So there is a resistance in assigning responsibility for tasks or whatever, things.
Okay. Right. Let's talk about some examples. Can you share some examples of how neglecting project management has led to a significant project failures, and what lessons can be learned from these failures?
Yeah, in maybe we have another discussion topics in one of the upcoming talks, and it's about mega projects.
Yeah.
And mega projects, these are the big hairy problems, and actually nobody has an overview what's happening in the mega project. So it's like the Boston Big Dick, It's like the Denver Airport baggage line, which took 16 months later to go live with, so which was a disaster at the Denver Airport, or Berlin Airport, which still it's now running, but still a disaster. So these are the big things, and there is consensus around researchers that mega projects continue to fail on budget, on schedule, on scope again and again. So there is no solution to make mega projects, no general solution to make mega projects successful. But for sure, I know there are some ideas now to look at mega projects in another way, to understand that mega projects, which might take many years, and a lot of and billions of dollars, to look at them in a way that you employ the right project management tools for them, And it's maybe not very important that you use the project management tools of budget control so much, because in the end, a mega project will always cost more. If you understand this, you don't have to try to to meet the deadline. You have to understand that you need more money. Give an example how mega project can do that. Every Olympic Games is a mega project, if you want,
Yep. Yep.
And every Olympic Games might have a budget to sell the case, but they understand that they will overrun the budget by magnitudes, And the point is that all Olympic Games have a project or a department, the organizations, committees, national, they have somebody who is in charge of funding. So finding new or existent funding sources, extending the funds, it's not only that maybe the tickets are sold or that the sponsors are advertising the Olympic Games or that others want to be mentioned in some brochures or so. There are many sources. So I saw a very good example of that. It was the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City. It won the prize of the Project of the Year of PMI. I don't know, maybe 2006, 7, 8. And I was on that group of people who are looking into the Project of the Year award. And it was always interesting. You got 10 of these projects and you judge them and you rank them. And this Olympic Games in Salt Lake City, they were good because they employed very new ways how to create funding. So in the end, they were successful. And around the Olympic Games, always, there is let's say, a context, a gray zone of things which don't belong really to the Olympic Games, but maybe they belong to the wider infrastructure development of this area where the Olympic Games happen. So if you build let's say, a metro line, so would you say that's an Olympic Games metro line, or would you say we have to do it anyhow? So this context is a little bit difficult because then it's hard to see the boundaries where the budget for the Olympic Games is and where the budget is for the whole thing that is costing the community, the nation, some money. In the end, Olympic Games are always successful because no Olympic Games were delayed.
Yep.
And all of them ran through. And the IOC, the Olympic global body, they were always profiting from it.
Yeah.
And yeah. And in the end, if you look back 20 years, every city is happy that they had Olympic Games, even if 20 years ago it was a financial disaster for them.
Exactly. Look, yeah. I mean, I know one big project, mega project in Australia, NBN, National Broadband Network. So, and you talk about the budget and all those. They started with $2 billion budget, and few months later, it became $11 billion. Hang on, it's a taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
And by the time it finished, it was $55 billion. How come the 2 billion become 55?
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. Because everybody understands mega projects go over budget. And
You can estimate when I know if you say, hey, you're going to go 55 billion, people already assume that it's going to be another 110 billion.
Yeah. Well, the bad thing would be if this 55 billion would be funded from the taxpayer.
Exactly.
Yeah, but as in Salt Lake City, they found a lot of funding sources which were not the taxpayer. And in the US, if you ask the state for more money, you don't probably get it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe you have to convince some people. Yeah. So what's important is if you try to fund money, you have to do stakeholder engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to look at the outside, because and change your strategy and adapt to a strategy. Adapt your strategy to the environment that's changing, but also see what is the strategy of the national government, city government, the regional government. What is, you have always looking at what's going on there in the strategy alignment part. And then you have to also look, it's not important what you promised in terms of outputs and bridges or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's important what benefits are there, because you can sell benefits. Benefits might include reputation. And that's one of the major benefits of Olympic Games. It's the reputation of this area, The Rio Olympic Games were a financial disaster. There were other disasters, but looking back some years, everybody in Rio is happy about that. Maybe not at that moment when they were finished, because then they might have some tax problems, but in the end, all major projects, I would say, in the hindsight, are good projects.
Maybe if we just not look from the money point of view or time point of view, look at the stakeholder satisfaction point of view. I mean, if the stakeholder happy,
Yeah.
you can say, yeah, we are good.
Yeah. But even then, during the time of such a program over several years, stakeholders change. So they have different satisfaction levels. So the first satisfaction points for stakeholders are if they win the award from the IOC that they can hold the Olympic Games, and that's the reason why they turn in a bid for $2 billion. And after they got the approval, and they said, okay, let's do it, and then a revised budget comes in and it's $15 billion, and maybe it ends up with 55, as you said. So this is the satisfaction at a certain point of time is different from the satisfaction, let's say, 2 years along.
All right, good. Thank you. How do experienced project managers change management when handling traditional versus non-traditional organization structure?
Let's say both. Look at both. So what is across both? What is common in traditional and non-traditional organizational structures? So it's a cultural sensitivity because these are humans, regardless how they organize, how they have the role in a structure. Their cultural sensitivity, like I talked about the Japanese, about project. We are all responsible for the project. That's the same. Also, the utilization of technology, because regardless how you're organized, you will use email and phones and WhatsApp and whatever, now AI. That's not really changing from structure to structure.
Yeah.
Although the way you as a project manager, deal with stakeholders, engage with them, analyze them, identify them first, analyze what their interests and what their potential is, and then engage with them to change their perception of the project into a positive one, and continuous learning. So these are the four things, cultural sensitivity, technology utilization, stakeholder engagement, and continuous learning, which you do in every kind of organization. Now let's look at the traditional one. You have the hierarchy, and then you have clear communication, because you look upwards. Your boss is telling you something, you understand, and you break it down, and you give it downwards. So they have a authority, and decision making is very clear. Because you are empowered or not, and then you have to escalate and ask for a decision. There are formal processes, because this kind of traditional and hierarchical organization comes with implementation of Taylorism, so that different people have different responsibilities, and the flow or value creation flow, if you want, across these different roles and capabilities is by process management. That's where you have the business process management thing. And then you have risk management is also very high, because, when you are in a hierarchy and you have a responsibility, then there is something going on outside of your direct responsibility, and this creates risks for you. And so you are more prone to deal with risks. Non-traditional, on the other hand, they are more flexible in adapting to changes in the context in the outside. And you, in contrast to the traditional, you can have cross-silo collaboration, and communication is easy. So the communication also becomes a little bit more difficult, because you have to understand which person in that flat organization needs to know something. In the hierarchy, is very clear, go up, go down. But in a flat organization, when everybody is on an equal level, you cannot give the email to everybody, but you have to find out who are the right people to understand. That's more difficult, but collaboration is good. give you an example. I recently had a pharmaceutical company in Switzerland. So they had a problem um, in creating a flow of things, and so of chemicals through a pipe or whatever. A solution could be that they install some motors to drive the fluid, through the pipes. And but they said, okay, we have no experience with motors with these drivers. And then, somebody recognized, oh, but we have a department who built these kind of motors for customers. And then let's collaborate. Though
Yeah.
they didn't do that, because collaborating, buying motors from your own department is much more difficult than buying it from the outside.
Yeah.
It's not just the procurement process, because you have to deal with profit margins, and why should I sell motors to myself? This is all a little bit difficult. And yeah, for sure, in non-traditional organizations, you are more adaptive to changes, and you are more decentralized. A good example, and I think everybody should look at this, um, is the company of Haier.
Yeah.
So they are doing
I-
yeah, and in China, and there is a very good Harvard Business Review article from some years when they describe Haier as an example, how they organized in a very non-traditional way,
yeah.
and they have all, well, organizations that are flat in a flat hierarchy, and they go into contracts with each other, and then they can collaborate. And yeah, if they are not satisfied with one of the companies, they can go elsewhere. So it's a good example how it can work. But most big organizations, if I look at the big players, they are traditional, because there is a kind of planning, a kind of prediction, yeah, need, and some control,
Yeah.
and that is best done within traditional organizations.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay. In what ways can project management align with and robustly support an organization's strategic goals, especially in a volatile and fast-changing business environment? So this alignment can provide a strong foundation for organizations' confidence and success.
Yeah, well, first of all, not all organizations really have a strategy
Yeah.
or have strategic goals. So some say, okay, we have an evolving or emerging strategy. Then you have nothing. Or they have a strategy, which also happens that is really some kind of blah blah. You could read out of this everything. But now let's assume, and the question assumes that we have a strategy and strategic goals, and we want to do them. And so, if first, I think it's important um, that a project manager is understanding what strategic alignment is. Strategic alignment means that you really understand and adapt to the changes that are happening in the strategy. So
Yeah.
we have a project, and it starts from the beginning. You have a charter and all the business case maybe, and then you start your journey for, let's say, a year. Don't assume that in that year the strategy will not change. Maybe it does. So you have to have a look and at this, and understand how is it changing. Even, if you have an important project with an important output, which might have an impact on strategy because it's maybe implementing one of the strategic goals, you also have an impact on the strategy itself. Maybe you should give some input to the strategy people who are dealing with strategy in your organization. So that's one thing. So in order to do that, you need to be agile, and you always need to be agile, because if you are not agile, you are not a living thing. A stone is not agile. But let's say a deer is, and a human also is. All living things are agile because life is adapting to the changing environment, and context. Um, Also, if you see the strategic goal as your target in your project, then you have to employ risk management for that. What would establish a risk, a potential event that endangers my project. And it could also be that, if the strategy changes this and that, so let's say we withdraw all our business out of Russia, then, you can close all your Russia translations, probably. So, and your project of dealing with the translations globally, yeah, it has a change, definitely. And you have to adapt to that, Um, and for that, you cannot really live in a bubble of, let's say, a charter and a project environment fixed in time as it was at the project start when you got approval, when the business case was there. But you always have to see, okay, what's happening on the outside, and you don't read it maybe in the emails or in the newsletters, but you hear it, through stakeholder engagement. So you have to deal maybe with a stakeholder who is a part of the strategy group, and then maybe build a relationship and maybe have a coffee every month or so, and see what he can anticipate for, which is important maybe for your project. So hopefully your project is important enough to relate to the strategy that has been defined into the goals. What you also can do, all the change management you have to establish is also organizational change management. So if you go back and think about uh, what impact does your project on a strategic goal have on the organization, you have immediately organizational change management. You have to deal with the people who are using your change product or whatever software, whatever it is, different markets, and go on and very early understand how to make sure these guys understand what is happening to them. It's not only the product you are creating as a project, but it's also the people who will use this product, this change product, to establish the new strategic goal, to make it happen.
Mm, exactly. No, thank you. This is very important for whenever you're doing any project, you have to align with strategic goals, objectives. And it's changing. So many of the organization is changing very fast. We need to be realigning ourselves according to the current strategy. You cannot say, hey, I'm doing my work. I don't care about strategy. No. If organization strategy, vision, direction change, you have to realign yourself. Or that project or program not required. Okay. How can organization overcome resistance or to the project management practices and integrate these practices into unique cultural context?
Yeah, we talked about the obstacles, you
Yeah.
could come to sell project management or to implement project management. And these are all the steps we have to consider. So I think when you want to really establish a project, to implement project management, you need a executive sponsor for that.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure.
and think about who it would be. At best the highest position to do that is the CEO, if you want. As we discussed, how to deal with the organizational stakeholders. Yeah, that's the point. Look for the right guy here.
Mm.
Uh, then you have to start with understanding what the cultural alignment would be necessary for project management. So when I did in '95, so I was in charge to build a PMO
Mm.
for an IT organization of a insurance company in Germany, 600 people in that IT organization. So
Okay.
a huge group, and so these were insurance companies are very bureaucratic organizations, and they have their silos and projects, and it's more a process-driven organization, ongoing things, and my target was to change the mindset towards a service orientation, to a project organization, so that we have not only this continuous flow of work, but we have these projects, and then we have to understand what does the client need, and this is a different mindset to look for the client. And so how did I do that? I embedded this kind of cultural alignment mindset change into basic project management classes, which were offered to everybody of the 600. And the target was, to identify from the 600, maybe 100 who are really grasping the idea and then being champions of it and convincing their colleagues to go the same way. So awareness and training about that is certainly necessary. And then, as I just said, you have to find um, people who are implementing change, because you may lead the change project, but you will not convince everybody of the 600. You have to find a good set, maybe 10, 20 champions who are respected and are a part of the group, and they are convinced, and then they, like a snowballing system, they will roll out the ideas and the mindset. And yeah, look for a phased approach, because uh, you cannot do everything at once. You cannot convince every 600, even if you have these project management workshops, and they were 2 days, and we from the 600 we targeted about 200, and this also takes almost a year, if you go with these workshops. And communication. You cannot over communicate this, and this communication is not only from you, but also from the champions. So why not go in and present the champions with their own stories and examples. And from time to time, let the sponsor also have a small article and a motivational speech or motivational chapter in a newsletter, whatever. And then, monitor the stuff, monitor how you are succeeding, increasing the cultural understanding, the need for the change, and how, let's say, resistance goes down. All of this can be measured, should be measured, and then you have an idea. So I had this, I often watched these kind of change programs, if it is for project management or if it is for something else. So I had another example when we had an outsourcing project.
Yeah.
And the outsourcing was on the small changes on an application, and all these tasks went to an Indian company, which costs a lot of money. But these people who are working on that IT department, they didn't want to give up this small task because it was easy to fill in between. You could change it, but they should not do this anymore. And this was a project very well managed, monitored, reported, phased approach with champions and everything. And it took 9 months to change, to make the organization accept that the part of their current work is being outsourced to somebody else, and you should not do this stuff. And there were certainly risks coming up and so on. But in the end, I think we had, from this, about 100 people who were affected in the German organization, maybe 2 or 3 were really against it, and I think 2 of them left the company. But I think it's a low percentage, 2 or 3% that you lose it. I've seen other change programs where maybe 10 or 15% of the people don't want to follow the change.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a system when you bring a change, especially, when you talk about organization, which if they don't believe in project management, suddenly, hey, what are project management? So your approach of phased, we had 600 employees, you cannot make them everybody start believing in that. You find the champions, you work with them, show them the value, and then next group, there you go.
Yeah. Well, the point is, if they don't believe in project management, and you have to make them believe in that, or at least accept that's the way of working right now, then you have some people who won't go the way with you,
Yeah.
but that's apparent from the beginning, and maybe you also hire some new people who more fit into the thing, and maybe which have another experience from another company where they said it's wonderful. I hired with you because you promised me that you will implement project management.
Exactly. All right, Thomas, my next question. What are some proven strategies for building a compelling business case for investing in project management, particularly when facing skepticism from leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit a problem because a business case you compare the cost with the value or
Exactly.
the effect, and the costs are transparent. You have there's some overhead. You might establish a PMO. You have training efforts, and then maybe change projects. These all cost money and time.
Mm.
And on the other hand, so what do you get? And that's much less, um, let's say, um, predictable. So I found one reason very compelling, and they liked it. It was a C-suite. They hadn't have this project management established, and they experienced that the clients were calling them every week with escalations. Something is not functioning, and they didn't know what changed and why it changed. And this project manager in charge is in vacation. I don't know what to do, and so on. And so the target could be very easily in the value to limit the escalations, to reduce the escalations, and this measure. If you have your 5 people on the C-suite who get escalations, and you ask them to make a tally list, how many escalations they get and how much, maybe even how many hours they spent, because they have to talk to the guy, then they have to talk to understand what's happening, and then they have to find a solution and propose and talk again to the guy. Maybe it can take 5, 6 hours of their time. And, they are not being hired and paid to deal with escalations, honestly. So I'm not saying project management becomes an escalation measure, but avoiding escalations by creating more transparency, more trust. This is the value of project management in organizations. And then, yes, there is also maybe a financial value.
Yeah.
As you have less escalations, less problems. You might finish the projects more in time and more to budget, because you don't have to spend a lot of recovery costs if you run into a project problem. Yeah. So you have at the beginning in the business case, for project management, really try to quantify the benefits so that you can compare them with the cost also over time. Look for benchmarks. That's a very good thing. So if you have similar cases where organizations implemented project management and what they experience, and there are especially in the field of PMOs, there's a lot of research on benchmarks. So what did the PMO, how did the PMO succeed, over some time, and make sure that everything you do aligns with the strategic objectives. So know the strategy. So you can always tell, okay, what we are doing here, where we are spending money, is supporting our strategic objectives and goals.
Yeah.
With the benchmark showcase pilots, maybe go to another company, let them talk for you, and also do some risk management in the end to make sure that what comes into your path that you are anticipated, that you have an answer for it.
So Look, there are many things we can do to, it's about showing them the value with or without project management or,
Yeah.
uh,
You,
if we, show them that this is how previous projects have failed, or we could have been managed, this could have been managed better by applying these techniques here, and by using the new technology or new way of doing things, we can do, or we can save you money. So sometimes people see the money, okay, hiring person 200,000, but how much value could I add? But you say, hang on, by hiring me and giving like 200,000, but I'm saving you $20 million.
yeah.
And that can be a big thing. By having the right person managing the program or project, who knows? So that's why, of course, a big decision for companies who never use project management to start seeing, believing that, yeah, there's a value for the project manager come with all the experience and expertise and knowledge and all the certificates. They can control or manage the project and get the value for us much faster, much better than which we never got.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Thomas, thank you once again. You have been great so far, and I know we have many more to go. And looking forward
Yeah. Yeah.
to our next webinar with a podcast coming up next month. So,
Yeah.
right, so thank you.
It's about mega projects then.
It's about the mega project, guys. If you are interested, you can't wait for that mega project. How to manage the mega projects, not just 1 million, billion. We're talking $1 billion giga projects. Anyway, so Thomas, thank you very much, and you have a great day, and all of you have a great time. Thank you. Take care.